Today I want to briefly talk about finding your tourney head. There are many different ways that work for many different people. This worked for me, and it has worked for quite a few people who I've shared it with. But absolutely, I will not tell you that this is the be-all and end-all and the only way that will work for you. But similar to my SCA fencing is for everybody, that can be distilled down to what's the point. That's where I started trying to figure out how to find a tourney head, which is, what does that mean? What do we do in a tourney that's different than what we do in practice? The most obvious thing that we probably all think of is the stakes are higher. You know, we get a little more nervous perhaps, and that's very true. We, well, most of us, not all of us, but most of us, when we are fighting in a tournament, just as the bout starts, maybe just before it, or even as we line up, or as the swords start flying, our adrenaline spikes. But more than just that, in a tournament, most of the time, you have some seconds to minutes of that adrenaline, and then nothing. And then again with the adrenaline, and then nothing. And that cycle throughout the few hours or even longer of a tournament is absolutely exhausting. So first, there's about finding your tourney head, and two, there's frankly practicing it, because even for people who can get into the tourney head, some of them will just get exhausted, and like you'll see these people sort of make it into the semifinals over and over, and then can't necessarily finish. And it's possible that there's always going to be 2 or 3 people, or just one who's better than that person. But more likely than not, I bet you that person could win a tournament on any given day, but they get exhausted from that cycling of adrenaline more than the other people who tend to finish in the top 2 or in the top 1. So it's about practicing both. Now, if you're wondering what I'm talking about, I'm sure that you have seen this, experienced this yourself. Most of us play even simple things like video games that might require dexterity and speed, and we can be relaxed and play them and probably do all right. But if we sort of tense ourselves up, like psych ourselves up, you do just that much better. I enjoy playing these simple little puzzle games, and I have tried that even myself, and a puzzle that might take me 40 seconds, I can do in the 30 seconds, 32 seconds if I let myself get that adrenaline rush. Frankly, I don't like getting that adrenaline rush in any real other aspect of my life, but I have had to practice it for certain other things. Like, for example, I learned piano and went through the conservatory system, so I had to take these piano exams. So I practiced that adrenaline rush just before playing a piece of music, because I might get that nervous during the exam. And so I needed to be able to practice playing the piano under that adrenaline rush to make sure that I was still able to play evenly, at the right speed, and with emotion, because all of these things can go by the wayside when you feel that adrenaline rush. But anyways, how can you practice this? Sure, you can do practice tournaments. You can run tournaments at your practice. But generally, that is also always the same type of people there. Not the same type of people, the same people there. So that's not actually one thing that I advocate. I mean, go ahead and do it. I just don't advocate it for actually helping you find your tourney head necessarily. Especially for those of you who are good enough to win in a small local practice, or be a real contender in some of the more elite tournaments. What I do recommend is sort of psyching yourself up for a few fights. I used to do this for like the first 3 fights for anyone at practice that I'm going to go out and just do a whole bunch of passes with. The first 3 fights, I would tell myself, I cannot lose this one. And I would do that for the first 3. My adrenaline would spike. I would give it my all. I would fence. I would make sure that my goals were met, that I wasn't hitting too hard, that my style was good, etc. I would analyze those bouts for myself. And then I would go on, which my normal is that I would go on and fence against the person in order to try to help them improve, sort of watch their style. That's just what I do at practice most of the time. I don't suggest necessarily just doing it for those first 3, in that people will catch on and then they'll know that those first 3 are the ones where you're sort of psyching yourself up. Now, that may be good, all right, in that if they come at it with, I gotta win these 3, I can't lose this one, then you might even get a more elite fight from them. But I suggest doing this at every practice with every opponent. It doesn't matter if the person's only been fencing like 3 months. Sometimes it's that newcomer who's going to do something that you don't expect in a timing you don't expect, that's going to get you in a tournament. Don't do it for more than 3, because that's about as long as even a fight in a tournament will take. You really want to practice that adrenaline spike and then no adrenaline spike. So if you do it sort of with each person that you do fence over the course of a practice, you'll have done it several times, and thus you're going to be practicing getting into that mindset, getting your adrenaline rush, letting it calm down, and then cycling over again. And whatever you do, make sure you stay good and nice. Not just don't hit too hard, but don't be an a-hole. Everyone already has one. They don't need you. All right? Remember, these are our friends. We play with them. We fight with them. At the end of the day, they're the ones we're gonna, go out and get chicken wings with. So find your tourney head, and find your tourney head in how you can continue to be a good person. Thanks.